Hi, so today we will talk about a book that was written in 1833 by Dr. Beaumont. It's a book where he wrote all the experiments he did on Alexis St Martin. So Alexis St Martin was a guy who got shot in the torso when he was around 18 years old. And so it was an accident, and Dr. Beaumont was in the area, so Alexis was brought to him, and Dr. Beaumont could save his life. And but after he saved his life, after he healed the injury of Alexis, Alexis kept a hole in the torso, and from the hole you could see the inside of the stomach. Okay, so Dr. Beaumont took the advantage of that and asked Alexis to stay with him for a few years so he could make experiments on him to study to study his stomach. So that's why we say that Dr. Beaumont is the father of gastroenterology, because he's really the first person, the first doctor who really studied the stomach and the functions of the stomach, the function of the stomach juice, and he reported everything he observed in his book. So this is what we will talk about today. Everything I will quote here in this video comes from the book, except the last slide where I will tell you what happened with Alexis, the end of his life, how he died. And but yeah, so we will see very interesting stuff because again, it was the very first time in history that someone could observe from his own eyes what was happening in the stomach. So Dr. Beaumont made many experiments on St. Martin, and that's what we will see today. Okay, so here this is a quote on this slide from the beginning of the book where Dr. Beaumont explains in details what happened when Alexis was shot and how he could heal him. So I let you pause this slide if you want to read this part here. So, but yeah, so Alexis stayed with Dr. Beaumont in 1825. That's the first year where Dr. Beaumont could make some experiments on St. Martin. Then St. Martin left. He went back to Canada. When he went back to Canada, he came back to his old job and he got married and got children. But then Dr. Beaumont really wanted to see Alexis again because he really wanted to study him. So he spent lots of money and lots of time trying to find him. And he could find him in 1829, and he convinced him to come back to him so he could make experiments on him. So St. Martin came back to Beaumont and agreed to have experiments done on him from 1829 until 1833, so for 4 years. So this is like a picture of, it's like a reproduction of the torso of Alexis St. Martin. I think this is not a very exact, reproduction of his injury because his injury was not as big. So actually, I don't know what it's supposed to represent, maybe when that happened or... So in the beginning, yes, when the accident happened, for sure it was bigger, but we will see in the next slides that actually it was not such a big hole and it was a little bit upper near the pec. Okay, so here you have the real pictures. So these are pictures that you can find in the book, and here you have a better idea of how was the hole in the chest of St. Martin. So you see it's not as big as shown in the previous slide, but still it's still quite big. Here you can see, here you have another picture here. So here you see that the hole was really like right under his pec. And this is his nipple, so you can just see better where it was. So it was really quite high. And here you have a drawing that shows how Dr. Beaumont made the experiments on St. Martin. He would tie like a piece of food with a thread, and yeah, he would just let it hang in the stomach for a few minutes or a few hours, and then he would draw the food out and observe, how the digestive juices, how the stomach juices worked on the piece of food. So yeah. This is another picture that you can see in the book. Here again, so a little closer. So you see the hole right here, and here again a little closer. And here again, so this is a drawing that gives us an idea more or less where was the hole and what Dr. Beaumont could see from the hole. So basically it was like in that area here, on the top part of the stomach. So how did Dr. Beaumont do the experiments on St. Martin? So as I said, he would put some food attached to a thread in the stomach of St. Martin and then take it out and observe it. Or what he would do also, he would extract some of the gastric juice from the stomach of St. Martin and use the gastric juices in vials, so outside, in vitro. Okay, so in science we say in vivo, that's experiments made on an animal or a person, so in vivo, and in vitro is outside of the body in a vial or in a petri dish. Okay, so Dr. Beaumont did both kind of experiments, in vivo inside St. Martin and in vitro outside of St. Martin's body, but using his gastric juices. So what he would do is basically like it is in the picture here. So St. Martin would lay down on the left side, and Dr. Beaumont would put like a hose, like in a tube, like in the hole, and collect the liquid. And something interesting here, we will talk about that again in the next slide, but something that Dr. Beaumont observed is that in a healthy state, there is no bile in the stomach. It's just pure gastric juice. So, but here he says that if Martin was laying on his back and he would like push or massage the area of the liver, then some bile would, go back up in the stomach, and in these conditions, Dr. Beaumont could find some bile in the juices he would extract from St. Martin. So what are the conditions for the production of gastric juice? So what Dr. Beaumont observed is that in an empty state, so when the stomach is empty, there is no stomach juice. There's nothing in the stomach. Okay. So he says the stomach contains no gastric juice, or at any rate, but a very small quantity in its empty state or when aliment. So he says the word aliment all over the book. Aliment is food. I guess it's the old word for food, but it's funny because aliment is the word for food in French. So, so when he says aliment, it means food. So, or when aliment or other irritant is not present. In the most natural and healthy states of the stomach, there are little or no fluids of any kind in the gastric cavity until excited by aliment or other irritants. Okay, so Dr. Beaumont would observe that the stomach starts making juice only when something gets in the stomach, either food, either when Dr. Beaumont would put the tubes, or anything in the stomach. Then when the tubes would poke like the inside of the stomach would start making juice. And here also something important is that he says in febrile diathesis, so basically this is an old word for a disease. So so when people have like disease with fever, very little or no gastric juice is secreted. Hence the importance of withholding food from the stomach in febrile complaints. It can afford no nourishment, but is actually a source of irritation to that organ and consequently the whole system. So I thought this was an important quote in his book, because this shows us that, when you are sick and you are not hungry, it's normal and you should not force food in your stomach. You should not, force yourself to eat, because this is what observed Dr. Beaumont. He says that when you are sick with fever, there is no gastric juice that can be secreted in the stomach. So if you put food in your stomach, because you are diseased, because you have fever, your stomach is not in a healthy state that can produce juice. So if you eat, you won't digest anything if you eat when you're sick. So as always, listen to your body and don't force any food on yourself if you are not hungry. Otherwise, you will just get worse, because on top of your disease, you will have indigestion. So here I listed some of the meals of Alexis I thought it was very interesting to see what a man in the beginning of the 19th century was eating on a regular basis. So, and it's important to know that Alexis was not like the high class of society. He was more like the slave of Dr. Beaumont. So it's really not a type of menu of like rich people in the beginning of the 19th century. I'm saying that because I've seen many people saying, like 200 years ago, only very rich people like aristocracy or kings or whatever ate meat regularly, and most people would eat meat like once a month or once a week maximum. No, and I thought this was a perfect example here. So again, Dr. Beaumont made many experiments on Alexis, and every day he would write what Alexis ate at what time, in what quantity, and how he digested the food. Okay, so this is where I took these meals from the book. Okay, so there's, of course, there are way more meals that were listed, but I could not put all of them here. But again, so let's read just a few. So venison steak, cranberry jelly, bread and coffee, fat pork, bread and potatoes, tripe and pig's feet, bread and coffee, potatoes and meat, fried sausages, cornbread and coffee, fresh boiled beef and 5 ounces of bread, boiled beef, bread, 1 pint of coffee, fresh boiled beef, bread, potatoes, boiled codfish and bread, mutton, barley soup and bread, mutton soup and bread, broiled fresh codfish, bread and coffee, and so on and so on. So what is very interesting, I think, what struck me is that there is meat or animal food like almost at every meal. Like it's like 99% of Alexis' meals are made of basically of meat, of a starch, and basically meat and starch. That's the two main things in his diet. And so it's always, almost always meat and almost always bread. Okay, and you will see that he rarely ate vegetables. Sometimes he would eat some cabbage, sometimes he would eat some carrots, but really, and sometimes some soups. So we don't exactly know what were in the soups, but really most of the times it's meat or fish, bread, and another source of starch like potatoes or rice. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And you will also notice that he almost never ate sugar. There's just like twice in the book where I read that he had some sugar, like here when he ate boiled sago with sugar. And there's another time in the book, I didn't list it here, but where he took custard. He ate custard. So I'm not sure what custard could be at the time, but I guess it's like, cream with sugar, but I'm not sure. So yeah, most of the time no sugar at all. Very simple meals. And if you think about our meals nowadays, what people eat nowadays, like it's crazy how much sugar people eat compared to like 200 years ago. So no wonder people are so sick nowadays. No wonder why people get fat and get diabetes and diseases like that. So this is here what you see, Alexis' diet. This is our natural diet that we should eat. Okay, Alexis was very healthy. And you can see that in the book because Dr. Beaumont always says that Alexis was very active, doing lots of stuff, and he paddled his way back to Canada for I don't know how many miles with his wife and kids in the canoe. So he was very active and very healthy. Okay, so but yeah, so I thought that was very interesting, and it gives us a good idea what people ate 200 years ago. So one more thing I wanted to say. So he had in the book, he had 2, 3 or 4 maximum meals that were just vegetables or fruits and no meat and nothing else. So here he had a day where he ate wild berries and only wild berries, And what Beaumont observed about that, so he observed Alexis' stomach after he ate only wild berries all day long, and he observed that it was all effervescent in the stomach, like the berries like stayed quite a long time in his stomach and started to ferment in his stomach. And this is not really something we want, you know. So I just wanted to say that, like to point that, because many people think that fruits alone are easier to digest than fruit plus a protein or anything else. But really, in this book, you will see, if you read the book, by the way, I put the link of the book, you can read it online. I put the link in the description box under the video. So you will read in the book that like the few times where he only ate fruits and nothing else, it was really not easy to digest. Whereas another time he ate apples plus eggs and it was really easy to digest. So yeah, I'm just saying that because I don't like dogmas, and I know that some people have this dogma that fruits should not be eaten at the same time of other things. And I really think that it depends on the people. Like it will be true for some people that they will feel that it's easier for them to digest fruits alone with nothing else. But it's really not something general. You should not generalize that for the whole population. Okay, so that was just a parenthesis here. So the time of digestion. So Dr. Beaumont could do experiments to find out the average time of digestion, and he also could list which foods were easier to digest than other foods. And by the way, we will see that at the end of the video. I mean, we will see some details at the end of the video, like he calculated how much time it was to digest raw meat compared to cooked meat, raw carrots compared to cooked carrots, and so on. So very interesting experiments like that we will see in the end of this video. So time of digestion. He says the length of time consumed in the operation is various. It depends upon the quantity or quality of the ingesti. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The healthy or diseased state of the stomach. In the various experiments which I have made, the median time may be calculated about 3.5 hours. Okay, so that's the average time of digestion in the stomach, 3.5 hours. He says vegetable aliment requires more time, and digestion is facilitated by division and tenderness. So this, we already know. Vegetable vegetable foods require more time. That's only because actually, we know that vegetables are not digested in the stomach. They are digested later in the digestive system, basically mainly in the colon. Like we know that the fiber cannot be digested, so they continue until the colon, where they will get digested by the bacteria. So that's what Beaumont observed. He observed that usually, if it was like a meal with meat and vegetables, he observed that the vegetables would quickly pass through the stomach with no digestion, whereas the meat will stay there and get digested. Again, that's only because the vegetables are not digested in the stomach, so the stomach gets rid of the vegetable first, and then more time is spent, more energy is spent to digest what can be digested in the stomach. That is mainly meat. He says that here, by the way. They sometimes pass out of the stomach before them in an undigested state. Yeah. Here he says that venison, so venison is the old, I'm not sure if you still say that in English nowadays, but venison is the old word for game meat. Okay, so venison is ascertained to be one of the most digestible of substances. The qualities of looseness, of texture, and susceptibility of division belong to most of those wild meats and game, which are generally acknowledged to be easy of digestion. Beef and mutton of a certain age possess similar qualities. The opinion advanced by Paris, who was another scientist at the time, that the flesh of wild animals is more dense than the domesticated, does not correspond with the experience of those who are well acquainted with the former. Although, on making a section of wild flesh, Such appearance may be indicated, yet the fibers are found to be more easily separated by mastication. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, basically what he says is that, so it might surprise you, because most people think that game meat is much harder and much harder to digest compared to, you know, regular meat from cattle. But he observed the opposite. So and yeah, he says the looser the texture and the more tender the fiber of animal food, the easier it is of digestion. So of course, and he says oily substances are digested with great difficulty. So that's something interesting. He observed every time, or almost every time, when Alexis was eating a meal with fats, the meal would take much longer to digest compared as if there was no fat. Okay. Yeah, and here he talks about the fish. The variety of fish may be regarded as easily susceptible of digestion. The lobster, crab, and some others of the testaceous tribe are perhaps exceptions. So fish is easy to digest, except maybe shellfish that are not as easy to digest. And here are some examples of meals. So here at 6 o'clock, Alexis ate a full meal of boiled rice. So here I've put examples of meals that were digested very quickly compared to the normal meals. So boiled rice was digested in only 1 hour, but it was boiled rice only with nothing else. Here, another day, he had venison steak, cranberry jelly, and bread, and drank a pint of coffee. This meal was digested in 1 hour and a half. Here another meal. He breakfasted on soused tripe and pig's feet, bread and coffee, and this was digested in about 1 hour. In 1 hour. And he says gelatin, if not in too concrete a state, is a very digestible article of diet. Here, that's the meal I told you about earlier. Alexis ate 2 roasted eggs and 3 ripe apples, and it was digested very quickly in just 1 hour. And here is a meal that was made of raw, ripe, sour apples. So that's what I told you earlier. So here he only ate sour apples, and it was quite difficult to digest, and mostly it really hurt his stomach. Stomach was full of fluid and pulp of apples, quite acrid and irritating the edges of the aperture, as is always the case when he eats ascendant fruits or vegetables. Okay. Morbid appearance of the gastric surface considerably increased. And here are pages in the book where he listed the time of digestion of different foods in the stomach and outside the stomach. So I let you pause this slide if you want more details. So Dr. Beaumont observed that the normal temperature of the stomach is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.7 degrees Celsius. That's the normal average temperature of the stomach. But if Alexis was more active, exercised like right before, it would be a little higher, like 102 or so. He also observed that the temperature of the stomach would change with the weather. He says, it appears from the above experiments that the variation of the atmosphere produce effects upon the temperature of the stomach, a dry atmosphere increasing and a humid atmosphere diminishing it. So, what are the causes of digestive diseases? So, what Dr. Beaumont observed, it was that, what would really cause indigestion or really cause stomach issues was eating too much. So that's something very important to remember about his observations, because he repeats that like many times in the book. To Dr. Beaumont, this was very important. You should not eat too much, because there is a certain quantity of stomach juice that your stomach can make, and if you overeat, if you eat more than the quantity of stomach juice that your stomach can produce, you won't digest that food. Okay, so that's what I put in this slide. You can pause if you want more details. But yeah, he says when the juice becomes saturated, it refuses to dissolve more. Okay, when too much food has been taken at once, as when too much has been received in rapid succession. But if the quantity be moderate, no ill effect will ensue. Okay, after excessive eating or drinking, chemification is retarded. The fluids become acrid and sharp and almost invariably produce aphthous patches and other problems in the stomach. Undigested portions of food in the stomach produce all the phenomena of fever. And here it says the same again, improper indulgence in eating and drinking has been the most common precursor of these disease conditions of the coats of the stomach. And here it talks about alcohol. We will talk about alcohol again in a few slides, but the free use of ardent spirits, wine, beer, or any intoxicating liquor, when continued for some days, has invariably produced these morbid changes. Eating voraciously or to excess, swallowing food coarsely masticated or too fast, the introduction of solid pieces of meat suspended by the cords, blah, 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 almost invariably produce similar effects if repeated a number of times in close succession. Okay. And what he observed that was also very interesting is that usually he could see from his own eyes that the state of the stomach was diseased, like as he said, like it would look irritated with white patches and pimples in the stomach. So he could see that the stomach was diseased, but Alexis did not feel symptoms for many days. When Alexis started feeling symptoms, that was already after many days of a diseased state of the stomach. So I thought this was very interesting because, like most people, they think they are fine, like their digestive system is fine, they can eat whatever they want, and they are fine, they don't have any disease, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, you can feel fine, but have a diseased stomach or a diseased intestine. It's only after you abuse your digestive system too much for too long that you will start having symptoms. So the lesson here is don't wait until you have symptoms before you take care of your digestive system. Okay, you must take care of your digestive system every day as much as possible. Okay, because otherwise, if you eat whatever, you might not feel the symptoms right now, but you will pay for it later. Okay. So here he insists on the fact that you need to masticate, you need to chew your food very well. He says mastication is absolutely necessary to healthy digestion. Okay. The stomach will not retain undigested masses for a long time without suffering great disturbance. So we already know that it's very important to chew, but I wanted to point that here again because it's really important. When you swallow your food, it should be liquid. Okay, so what I recommend, especially to people who have stomach issues, is that you chew your food at least 50 times before you swallow it. Okay, and also you should eat slowly. He says that here, if food be swallowed rapidly, more will generally be taken into the stomach before the sensation of hunger is allayed that can be digested with ease. So if you eat slowly, you won't eat too much because you will have the right sensations of hunger or satiation. So if you eat too fast, you will eat too much. If you eat slowly, you won't eat too much, so you will digest better. The influence of emotions on digestion. So I thought it was very interesting to see that there are several times in the book where Dr. Beaumont observed that strong emotions really stopped the digestion of Alexis. So he says, slight febrile excitement, fright, or any sudden affection of the passions cause material alteration in the gastric juice appearance. Undue excitement with stimulating liquors, overloading the stomach with food, fear, anger, or whatever depresses or disturbs the nervous system. The villus coat becomes sometimes red and dry, at other times pale and moist, and loses its smooth and healthy appearance. Okay. Fear and anger check its secretion. Also, the latter causes an influx of bile into the stomach, which impairs its solvent properties. He observed that when Alexis was angry, was mad, there would be bile in the stomach, and this is not normal. That's what he said in the beginning of the book. That is not normal. You are not supposed to have bile in the stomach. If you have bile in the stomach, it's usually because either you had strong emotions and especially anger, or it's because you ate like too much oily foods. That's something he observed. Like the only times where you normally have bile in the stomach, that's when you ate a meal with a lot of fat. So in that case, yes, you can have bile in your stomach, and it's kind of normal because bile in the stomach will help digest faster the fat, in your meal. But normally it's not normal to have bile, and getting angry at the time of the meal or right after the meal is really not a good idea. So be careful. When you have a meal, you really need to be in a quiet environment. You really need to not listening to the news or to movies, like scary movies or stuff like that. Okay, it's very important. Here he describes an experiment on St. Martin. So he ate fat pork, bread and potatoes, and when he checked the stomach, when he checked the gastric juice, it was considerably tinged with yellow bile. And this, I suppose, to have been the effect of violent anger, which occurred about the time of taking out this parcel. Okay. This experiment shows the effect of violent passion on the digestive apparatus. Now, the color of the tongue and the stomach health. I just wanted to talk about that here because several times in the book, Dr. Beaumont observed that when the stomach was diseased, the color of the tongue changed. From pink, it would get like yellow or kind of yellowish, whitish. Okay, so when a healthy state of the stomach is restored, the tongue invariably becomes clear. So he had fried sausage, dry toast, and a pint of coffee. He apparently didn't digest that very well. And Dr. Beaumont describes a stomach full of fluids, villus coat, red and irritable, inclining to dryness, a thin whitish coat on the tongue, and a similar appearance on the protruded portion of the stomach. Okay. This experiment showed that when there are indications of disease on the coat of the stomach and on the tongue, digestion is consequently protracted. And also he observed that after drinking. So when Alexis drank too much alcohol, he had a thin yellowish brown coat on his tongue. Okay, so a white tongue does not always mean that you have candida. I know that everybody says that, and I know you see that everywhere, but a white tongue can be so many more things. It's not always candida. A white tongue can be a diseased stomach, a diseased liver, or diseased gut in general. But it doesn't mean that you have candida. So I know everybody has heard white tongue candida, but here I just wanted to point that white tongue is not necessarily candida, but is always an indication that you don't have a very healthy digestive system. So bile, we already talked about that, so I won't spend too much on this slide. But so here on this picture, you can see the stomach here, you can see the gallbladder here, the liver here. So the gallbladder releases bile in the duodenum, in the beginning of the small intestine, in this part here. So normally the bile is not supposed to get back into the stomach. But as I said before, Beaumont observed that the times, like sometimes there was bile in the stomach, that was after Alexis was angry or had violent emotions, or when he ate too much fat. Basically, that's it. Okay. Oily or fatty food is sooner digested when there is a small admixture of bile with the gastric juice. Exercise. So here, Dr. Beaumont observed that moderate exercise conduces considerably to healthy and rapid digestion. Gentle exercise increases the circulation of the system, the temperature of the stomach, promotes the discharge of the gastric juice as well as digestion in the stomach. Severe and fatiguing exercise, on the contrary, retards digestion. A complete state of repose is unfavorable to speedy digestion. So basically what you need to remember is that after you have a meal, and especially a heavy meal, it's not a good idea to exercise too much. It is not a good idea to stay still and not doing nothing. The good thing to do is go have a walk, a gentle walk. That's what you should do, like a gentle walk, like 20, 30 minutes. That will really help your digestion. But if you eat and you stay sitting and don't move, or if you go to bed and have a nap right away, you won't digest very well. That's what Dr. Beaumont observed. At one point in the book, he asked this question: what is the best human diet? And I will read the extract here. It would be a task of great difficulty to designate the exact kind of diet that would, if generally adopted, be the most conducive to health and longevity. A considerable variety seems to be necessary to man in a state of civilization. This want of variety is induced by long habits which it would probably be unsafe to break through. Whether man was originally carnivorous or granivorous is a question which we cannot solve, and perhaps it is not worth the attempt. At present he is both, and with his present mode of existence we have to do. We cannot judge of the mode of digestion in the human stomach by that of animals, particularly the granivorous and ruminating animals. Carnivorous animals most resemble man in their digestive apparatus. So basically what he says is that he cannot say what is the best human diet, but he says that humans, are creatures of habit, and if you have been accustomed since your childhood to eat a certain type of food, basically you should keep eating this type of food. Like if you have like a too drastic change in your diet all of a sudden, then you will have issues. It's not because the new food you're eating is unhealthy, it's just because your digestive organs are not used to that new food. Okay, so it's very important to remember that habit is very important. Habit in the food you eat. Okay, so again, if you decide to change your diet, you need to do the change very, very, very slowly. Okay, otherwise you will have digestive issues. And also he says that humans are omnivores. Yeah, big surprise. So they are not supposed to eat only vegetables. They are not supposed to eat only meat. They are supposed to eat both types of food, animal products and vegetables. Okay, so here I put pictures of different digestive system of the human, of a carnivore, and of a herbivore. Here is a lion and a rhinoceros, but it doesn't matter because herbivores basically it looks like that, and carnivores basically it looks like that. So we can really see that like we have a stomach and a small intestine very similar to those of carnivorous animals, but we have a longer colon compared to carnivorous animals. But compared to herbivorous animals, we have a smaller stomach. Like some animals, like the cows, they have 4 stomachs. We don't have 4 stomachs. But most importantly, animals that eat lots of plants, they have huge cecums. The cecum is this part here. Our cecum is our appendix. It's very, very, very small. We basically don't have a cecum anymore. We might have had in the past, like thousands of years ago, but look the size of our cecum now. So this is an indication that we are not supposed to eat lots of plant foods. Okay, and also our colon is smaller than the colon of herbivorous animals. Okay, so we need to stop this debate between vegans and carnivores. We are neither of these two things. We are not carnivores, we are not vegans, we are omnivores. We are supposed to eat both types of foods. So now, what Dr. Beaumont observed between raw and cooked foods. So here I will read what he found. Boiled beef is easier to digest than raw beef. Raw oysters are easier to digest than stewed oysters. Soft cooked eggs are easier to digest than raw eggs that are easier to digest than firm egg whites that you really cooked, firm. Okay. Regarding cabbage, raw cabbage is digested faster than boiled cabbage, but actually, that's what he said in the beginning of the book. Like, the raw vegetables have the tendency to leave the stomach very quickly. Doesn't mean that they get digested in the stomach. It's just that the stomach doesn't want them in there because the stomach doesn't digest them at all, or just a little bit. But parsnip, boiled parsnip are easier to digest than raw. Boiled carrots are easier to digest than raw carrots. Boiled potatoes are easier to digest than raw potatoes. And regarding meat, he says here, raw meat is susceptible of digestion by the gastric juice, though in a less degree than cooked meat. So personally, I eat both. I eat cooked meat and raw meat. I feel that I digest both very well, and I really like the sensation of, raw meat, digestion of raw meat. So again, here is the observation of Beaumont on one guy. So of course, this book is really very interesting, but of course it's just one guy. It would have been even more interesting if he could have had these experiments done on like dozens of people. So of course you cannot generalize everything in this book that was made on one person to the whole population. My advice, as always, is listen to your body before anything or anyone else. Okay, so I'm saying that to the people who like eating raw meat. If you feel that you digest raw meat perfectly, fine, that's great. But here again, I just wanted to show that he observed that boiled meat was easier to digest than raw meat, but it doesn't mean that you should not eat raw meat. Always listen to your body. If you feel that when you eat raw meat, it stays in your stomach forever, then it means it's not for you. For some other people, raw meat will feel better digested than cooked meat. So what about liquids in the stomach? Basically, Beaumont observed that all liquids are not digested in the stomach except milk or liquids that have nourishment into them. So all liquids like coffee, like tea, like herbal teas, water, or alcohol, they are not digested in the stomach. They are quickly absorbed in the stomach, or they pass through the stomach very quickly. Okay, only milk is really digested, or soup. Here about soup, he says that when someone eats soup, he observed in the stomach that the liquid part of the soup gets through the stomach very quickly, and then the solid parts of the soup stay in the stomach and gets like harder than what it was in the soup, and in the harder form it can get digested. So that's what he basically observed. And he says that simple water is perhaps the only fluid that is called for by the wants of the economy. The artificial drinks are probably all more or less injurious, some more so than others, but none can claim exemption from the general charge. Even coffee and tea, the common beverages of all classes of people, have a tendency to debilitate the digestive organs. Okay, so personally, I always recommend to people who have digestive issues to completely eliminate alcohol, coffee, and tea. And this is confirmed by Dr. Beaumont. But if you read the book, you will see that Alexis drank coffee like very, very often. Like almost every day he would drink like a pint of coffee. And most days he had no digestive issues, even though he drank coffee. So I personally don't advise anyone with digestive issues drinking coffee, but like for very healthy people who have a very healthy digestive system, coffee from time to time will be fine. But again, if you are sick, if you don't have a healthy digestive system, coffee will hurt your digestive system on the long run. So milk, as I said, he observed that milk was digested. Also, he thinks that milk is a very easy to digest food, and he actually recommends it. I will read the extract here. In this experiment, it took 2 hours for the digestion of a meal of bread and milk. something shorter than the usual time for disposal of an ordinary meal. For those who have healthy and unsophisticated stomachs, milk appears to be one of the best articles of diet we possess. It is less stimulating than flesh and more nutritious than vegetables. For persons who are disposed to parexial complaints and who are not obliged to perform hard and exhausting labor, it is the most appropriate diet. But the stomach is creature of habit. It can become accustomed to any kind of diet, and sudden changes are liable to derange its healthy actions. To those accustomed to what is called high living, such as strong meats, strong drinks, and high seasoned food of all kinds, the transition to a milk diet which contains a considerably lowered stimulation would probably be an imprudent change. When necessary, the change should be so gradual that the stomach should, by degrees, become accommodated to it. So that's what we said earlier. If you want to change your diet, you have to do it very slowly. If you haven't drunk milk for years, it's not a good idea to start drinking 1 liter of milk every day. No, you have to start really slow. That's why also many people, when they start drinking raw milk, they think they are allergic or intolerant to milk, to raw milk, because they start too fast. If you haven't had milk for years, start with 1 teaspoon per day and very slowly ramp it up. Okay. Regarding cheese, he says, it would seem from this experiment that cheese was difficult of digestion. In addition to its closeness of texture, it generally contains a large proportion of oil. Chewed cheese is entirely digested faster than a whole piece, but it's still ended digested after 24 hours. So it's mainly the fat in cheese that makes cheese hard to digest. Alcohol, so we talked about alcohol before. Alcohol is really, really bad for the digestive system. It's really not a good idea to drink alcohol regularly or even have a beer or a glass of wine every day. It's really, really not a good idea. So here, I will read this experiment. I mean, this is a part in the book where he reports St. Martin having drunk alcohol every day for several days. So on July 28th, stomach empty, not healthy. Some erythema and aphthous patches on the mucous surface. St. Martin has been drinking ardent spirits pretty freely for 8 or 10 days past. He complains of no pain nor shows symptoms of any general indisposition. Says he feels well and has a good appetite. But the following days, inner membrane morbid, considerable erythema and some aphthous patches on the exposed surface. Secretions vitiated. The gastric fluids extracted this morning were mixed with a large proportion of thick, ropey mucus and considerable mucopurulent matter, slightly tinged with blood. St. Martin complains of no symptoms indicating any general derangement of the system, except an uneasy sensation and a tenderness at the pit of the stomach and some vertigo, with dimness and yellowness of vision on stooping down and rising again. He has a thin yellowish-brown coat on his tongue, and his countenance is rather sallow. Pulse uniform and regular, appetite good, rests quietly, and sleeps as well as usual. Okay, so here again, he observed, like Dr. Beaumont observed, that the stomach looks bad after several days of drinking, but St. Martin feels fine. So you know, yes, you should always listen to your body and to your symptoms, but be aware that you will abuse your body for days or weeks and don't feel anything. So you think you're good, but you are not. Okay. So this really shows that alcohol should not be drinking regularly. And Alexis' stomach gets back to normal on August 5th. So after several days after he stopped drinking. So it takes several days for the stomach to look healthy again after he stopped drinking. And about condiments, so mustard retarded the processes of digestion, slight morbid appearance on the mucous surface. And he says condiments, particularly those of the spicy kind, are non-essential Though they may assist the action of a debilitated stomach for a time, their continual use never fails to produce an indirect debility of that organ. Salt and vinegar are exceptions and are not obnoxious to discharge when used in moderation. They both assist in digestion. Vinegar by rendering muscular fiber more tender, and both together by producing a fluid having some analogy to the gastric juice. Okay, so what you need to remember from that is that spicy condiments, spicy foods like mustard and hot spices, it's okay from time to time, but on a regular basis, no. Unless you grew up in India or in Mexico, so you grew up in places where people, are used to eat very spicy foods since they were babies. As Dr. Beaumont said before, we are creatures of habit. So if you are not used to spicy food, don't start eating spicy food all the time. Okay, and yeah, I thought it was very interesting, this part about salt and vinegar. So salt and vinegar helps digestion. Why? Because we know that your stomach, to make hydrochloric acid, needs salt, needs sodium chloride. So that's why it's important to have natural, unrefined sea salt in your diet. And about vinegar, you know that someone who has stomach issues like hypochlorhydria, it is advised to these people that they drink like a glass of vinegar in a little bit of water before the meals. This really helps digestion. And Dr. Beaumont confirmed that. He says, like, both together, salt and vinegar, produce a fluid that is similar to the gastric juice. So yeah. Here are some pages in the book so that's at the end of the book, that's the conclusions drawn by Dr. Beaumont on digestion. So I let you pause this slide if you want more details. And here, Alexis' death. So Alexis, as I said before, was very healthy all his life. He was very active, and even though he had this very severe injury, he was perfectly fine, and he had a very long and happy and active life despite of the injury. He died at the age of about 80 years old. I say about 80 years old because depending what you read, where you read, some places, like in some pages on internet, it says he died at 78. In other places, he died at 86. So basically, he died around 80 years old. He had 6 children and lived a normal and very active life. At the end of his life, so when he died, so he was kind of traumatized, apparently, by the experiments of Dr. Beaumont on himself, because so he left after 4 years of Dr. Beaumont's experimenting on him. So he left in 1833, and he never wanted to have experiments made on him after that. And even after he died, some scientists wanted to buy his body to, study it some more, but his family refused, and they actually hid his body. They let the body in the sun for several days so it would completely rot, so that nobody could, use his body anymore. And then after the body was completely rotten, they buried it really deeply, like deeper than normal, and in a secret place, so nobody could dig out his body. So yeah, that's how he ended his life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, yeah, it was a very interesting book to read, and it really gives some perspective on gastric health, because we know, we all have heard that, yeah, you need to chew very well your food, you need to eat in a quiet area, in a quiet place, you need to eat normal quantities, don't stuff yourself. We already know that, but I thought it was really interesting to see that Dr. Beaumont observed it like with his own eyes. It's not just like saying, like someone said that. He observed that when Alexis was eating too much, was not chewing properly his food, or was angry or scared or had this type of emotions, he could see the stomach changing, the lining of the stomach changing. So yeah, I hope this video helps you if you have stomach issues. Really think about doing these things. Okay, exercise a little after eating. I mean, gentle exercise like walking. Don't eat too much, chew very well, and don't listen to the news when you have a meal, or to scary things, or to things that make you angry. Don't have an argument with the people around the table when you eat. You will digest better. And stay away from alcohol, tea, and coffee as long as you have digestive issues. Okay, I hope this video helped. Feel free to put a comment in the comments, to write a comment under the video, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.